Good afternoon. My name is Alex Ramft.
And I'm Justice Cullivan. Welcome to The Grit.
Girls wrestling started off their season hot, dominating all 6 dual meets that they competed in, including Harrison. They go off to Walsh Jesuit High School competing in Women of Ironman tournament.
Swimming goes on the road versus Gahanna tonight, and hockey goes on to Liberty on Saturday, starting off the season 2-5.
Girls basketball started off the season 1-1 with dominating 62-36 win over Whetstone. Tonight they take on Dublin Kaufman.
Basketball looks to start off their season against Dublin Kaufman also on Saturday at 4. The boys are coming off a historic season from last year, winning the state title.
Now we're going to start our favorite part of the show, the pick'ems that we got now. We've got the college football playoffs looking hot. So we're going to start up here, 5 versus 12, Oregon versus the 5th-ranked conference champion JMU.
Well, this looks like an amazing bracket. I think it's a lot more diversity in the bracket than it was last year. We see totally different home games in all the games than what we saw last year, so I'm super excited. I was a little worried because it looked like there's going to be a lot of repeats earlier in the season, but it looks like we're going to get a completely different bracket. JMU versus Oregon. I think this one's pretty easy to call. Oregon is obviously the number 5 team in the country for a reason. That defense has looked phenomenal. Dante Moore's looked great. I'm going to take Oregon.
Yeah, I'm obviously have to follow you here. JMU is a really solid team. They obviously were able to sneak into that playoff with that sneaky Duke win over Virginia, knocking Virginia out of the playoffs. No ACC champion this year, which is a huge shock. Obviously, Miami is still sneaking in, but there's not much competition here. Oregon's going to win by 100.
Then we got Alabama versus Oklahoma taking place in Norman. This one, I think, it's a rematch of just what we saw a couple weeks ago when Alabama was at home and they lost to Oklahoma. If you watch that game, though, it felt like Oklahoma never was really in control. There's just a lot of mistakes on Alabama's side. And obviously, at the end of the day, Oklahoma won the game, but it felt like Alabama should have won it. A lot of turnovers from Ty Simpson. He's looked pretty rough these last couple weeks, but I do think Alabama's going to get the win here. I just have a lot more faith in Kalen DeBoer than I do Brent Venables, especially on that offense side of the ball. Oklahoma has looked horrible down the stretch. John Mateer has not been anywhere near what we thought he would be, or you thought he would be at the beginning of the season. I'm going to take the Tide.
Yeah, this is another pretty easy game, I feel. Obviously, Oklahoma, absolutely phenomenal defense. And like you said, the offense has not looked great. Neither of these offenses have looked good to end the season. But I do think that Bama's going to tune it up a little bit more going away. I think they're going to be real ready for this matchup and playing in this environment. Obviously, we all know Bama strives in high-pressure environments. This one, I can see this going either way, really. But I do think Bama comes out pretty comfortable with it.
All right, then we got Tulane, the Green Wave versus Ole Miss, the Rebels. This one's going to be an interesting game also, mostly because we're going to see what Ole Miss is going to be like without their head coach, Lane Kiffin, and effectively their offensive coordinator, because he was the audible guy. He is famous for this whistle that he would do to change the play up. So I think it's going to be interesting how Ole Miss does, how they fare. This game also is a rematch, 45-10 blowout for Ole Miss at home. It's the same exact environment. I think it's a little bit closer. I think Tulane has looked really good, especially Jake Retzlaff has been throwing the ball a lot better. He's run the ball well all season. He has like 17 rushing touchdowns. But I trust Trinidad Chambliss to be calm, and I think Ole Miss is going to use their talent to overcome the adversity that they've had at the end of the season.
Yeah, and Ole Miss is going to be fired up, obviously losing Lane Kiffin to LSU. They are out to show everyone what they can still do without their coach. It's been obviously an interesting choice from Lane Kiffin, builds Ole Miss up. This has been their best season in program history, and then he decides to leave. This is going to be a blowout by a million. Ole Miss they're going to be ready to play. They're playing at home. They have the energy. Tulane, obviously, really, these last 2 conference champions every year never do great in the playoffs like we saw last year. Ole Miss is going to win Ole Miss is going to dominate the whole game, and especially in the second half, I think Ole Miss maybe has like a plus, like 40% point differential in the second half, even with their starters out. I see Ole Miss winning.
All right, and then probably the game that we're all really hyped for, obviously Alabama-Oklahoma was a great game, but this one is the other one that looks elite. We got the 2 teams that beat Notre Dame, Miami versus Texas A&M. Miami is going to be traveling to College Station to play this game. Honestly, I have not been impressed by Texas A&M. I've always thought they were on fraud watch, before that South Carolina game that they had that looked like a scare. Even going into that Texas game, I thought Texas was going to win. I never have been on the Aggies hype train. And that's going to continue here. I got to take Miami. I get that Mario Cristobal has really struggled down the stretch at Miami last couple of years. He's still a great defensive coach, especially when he's at Alabama. He was phenomenal. I have a hard time trusting either of these quarterbacks, but I am going to take the more experienced Carson Beck, even though he's known to throw a lot of interceptions. And also when you look at the defenses, I can't not take Ruben Bain and that Hurricanes defense. So give me the Miami to pull off the upset.
Yeah, and I think the main factor in this game is I think it's the home field advantage for Texas A&M. This Miami, obviously both teams looked pretty shaky throughout the whole year. Miami with a couple bad losses, started off the season hot and snuck in over Notre Dame, obviously just because the committee had to go with that head-to-head win. Even though I don't super agree with that choice, because I think you should value the Notre Dame's losses as a lot higher than Miami's losses. But it's whatever. Miami's in, and there's nothing anyone can do about it now. A&M, they've, as you said, they were ranked really highly, but never had that factor to show. I think some of the stuff that we saw in that South Carolina game, which that was the second half, was absolutely elite. That was one of the best games of football we've seen this year, was that 30-point comeback. I think they kind of get back to the fire and intensity they were playing with against the Gamecocks, and I think Texas A&M takes it.
All right, moving on, we got Oregon versus Texas Tech. We both have this one. This one I think is going to be so much fun. I really wish that they did the second round at home, because it'd be so fun to see it there at Texas Tech, one of the coolest stadiums. Hopefully they do the tortilla throw. They bring that back, even though they banned it. Anyway, this one is going to be elite. I believe it's played in the Rose Bowl. So it doesn't really favor Texas Tech or anything like that. It's kind of tough with this one. It's really, do you trust Dante Moore in that offense and that run game that they've had all season, or do you trust Jacob Rodriguez and that Texas Tech defense? Call me a Big Ten homer. I'm going to take Oregon. I think their only loss was a real big learning moment for them. They've really looked a lot better since the Indiana game. They've had a couple hiccups here and there, but overall, I just trust Oregon a lot more as a program. I trust Dan Lanning more as a coach. So I'm going to take Oregon here.
Yeah, and obviously Texas Tech has been such a surprise to everyone this year. Came out of nowhere and just started rolling through teams. Obviously, a big part is to that defense and Jacob Rodriguez, who, in my opinion, should definitely be a Heisman finalist. This is one of the weakest Heisman classes we've seen, really ever.
I think you could take a Julian Sand and put him in. I wouldn't be upset about it either.
Yeah. I feel like Jacob Rodriguez should be the Heisman this year. If there was any year for a defensive player, specifically a linebacker, to win it, it's this year. He has played phenomenal. He's been one of the best players in the country. And I see him making a big play towards the end of this game that puts them just over the top against Oregon.
Then we got Alabama versus Indiana. This one I'm also very excited for, because I really want to see if Indiana is that team. Obviously, they humbled Ohio State, and they humbled myself as I picked Ohio State to win by 50. One of my worst decisions. This one, I'm going to trust Alabama here. It's hard for me to think of Indiana as a supreme powerhouse that they seem to be now. And that's going to continue here. I got to pick Alabama, and I just have a feeling that this team, they have way more experience being here. Kalen DeBoer took a team to the national championship at Washington, so he has been in this environment before. I'm going to take Alabama. I think that the experience of the program just in general versus this Indiana team who has not made it past the first round will show here.
Yeah, and here I'm going to have to take Indiana just in spite of wanting to see that OSU versus Indiana rematch later in the season. The Big Ten championship was a good game to watch, but the Indiana game versus Ohio State was a great game to watch. Obviously, some solid quarterback play. Mendoza, most likely going to win the Heisman. I feel like we can all see it. I mean,
it's like minus 1,500
yeah,
odds.
He's been the favorite like the whole second half of the year, and everyone really knew that the Big Ten championship was deciding the Heisman. I think that this Indiana team, unlike what you said, is a powerhouse this year. Obviously, rolled through everyone and then beat Ohio State. Ohio State made some mistakes in that game that led to the loss. Ohio State definitely should have won that game. But I think Indiana being able to capitalize on those mistakes and being able to win with their top receiver out and then have Elijah Surratt. Elijah Surratt played phenomenal in that Big Ten championship. I think he's a big factor in this game against this Alabama defense, and I think Indiana wins.
Then we got Ole Miss versus Georgia, another rematch that we saw earlier this year. Georgia won at home in an absolute barn burner. It was a really high-scoring game, one of the best SEC games we have seen this year. again, I think Lane Kiffin being gone is really going to affect Ole Miss here and rather than the first round. I think that when the talent isn't so on one side of the field as it is with Tulane versus Ole Miss, I think that it's going to show that the coaching issues, the morale of the team is going to be really low. Wouldn't be surprised if you see a bunch of guys start transferring before even the playoffs even start. I'm going to take Georgia. They're, they're up there with like Ohio State and Alabama on here as the most tested teams throughout history. I think they're going to easily win. Not easily win, but I think they're going to get a pretty handled victory.
Yeah, and this Georgia team has really not had a bunch of bumps. Huge win over Alabama in the SEC championship. That was just an absolute domination. Kirby Smart always has his guys ready to go in playoffs. I don't see this one being that close. I'm going to take Georgia.
And then finally, we got Ohio State versus. For me, it's Miami. For you, it's Texas A&M. And I think no matter what, I think we both got to go here, Ohio State. I think they're the clear, in terms of talent on the roster and everything combined, outside of that one loss to Indiana, they've looked elite. And I think that one loss to Indiana was up to, a lot of people are saying that maybe we weren't showing our full hand and waiting for the playoffs. I don't know about that, but some questionable decisions. I also think that the signing day fiasco with Chris Henry really affected the game planning. I think that was a big scramble to go get him. So I don't think Ohio State's full focus was on it. They already knew they were locked into a top 4 slot. I think that they absolutely dominate Miami or dominate Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl, and I don't think it's particularly close.
Yeah, and I had this Ohio State defense just shutting down Texas A&M. I could see there being a shutout, which would be crazy for the second round of the playoffs. They've just looked so much better than everyone else besides Indiana this year. And there were some questions last week about who was calling the plays on the offense for Ohio State, obviously with Brian Hartline leaving after the playoffs. So we'll see what the coaches can dial up against this Texas A&M defense for me. But Ohio State is going to win, and it's not going to be very close, especially on the ground.
All right, the semifinals, which are going to be elite again this year. For me, it's Oregon versus Alabama. I think Oregon's talent is a lot better. I think as a team, they're more cohesive. I think they've been more consistent on the defensive side and offensive side of the ball. They can run the ball. Alabama can't run the ball. Everything points to Oregon winning this game. I think they remind me a lot of Ohio State last year, where they had that a bad loss. Kind of mid-season. That was Oregon for Ohio State last year. They didn't have the loss like we did against Michigan last year, but I do think that they have a fire lit underneath them. I think the road also with the teams they're playing, they match up well. I think they're just going to run the ball down Alabama. I don't think Alabama's going to be doing anything to stop about it. So I'm going to take Oregon to get the national championship.
Yeah, and for this game, this is where Jacob Rodriguez can kind of stop fully carrying Texas Tech. This Indiana team, one of the best defenses in the country, and Mendoza has obviously just been playing phenomenal. So I think this is kind of where the Texas Tech train slows down. Indiana, I think, wins pretty comfortably here with a really strong performance from their defense.
And then Georgia versus Ohio State. This is, I think, the national championship. I think these are the two best teams. I get Indiana beat Ohio State, and that's kind of a bit disingenuous to say that Ohio State's the best team, but I still think they are. I think Georgia's right there with them. Both had rough losses that they should have won. Georgia should have beat Alabama. Ohio State should have beat Indiana. Not in the championship game for Georgia, but in the championship game for Ohio State. I'm going to go with Ohio State. I think the offense I trust more. Gunnar Stockton is a great quarterback. I get it, but throwing the ball, he's been a little bit inconsistent down the stretch. I think Ohio State gets back to their roots, really starts airing the ball out. I think Jeremiah Smith is almost unstoppable. The Georgia defense hasn't looked like that great this season. It's looked okay at times, but I think Ohio State just overpowers them.
Yeah, in this game, this being a semifinal game brings back a lot of bad memories for everyone living in Ohio. Obviously, a couple years ago, that tragic New Year's Eve semifinal game. This is where Ohio State finally gets their revenge against Georgia. It's going to be a real close game. I think I could very well see Ohio State flipping the script, winning on a game-winning field goal, even though there were some struggles last week against Indiana with the kicking. But for my soul and everyone that cheers for Ohio State, we need to win this game by a field goal. I think that would just that would fix every problem that anyone has ever had, is Ohio State winning by a field goal against Georgia in the semifinals. So I'm going to take the Bucks.
And then Ohio State versus Oregon for me. I think, again, Ohio State, I think the talent is better. I think the coaching is better. Oregon has looked inconsistent on throwing the ball. Their defense has looked okay at times. Honestly, the offense in that Wisconsin game really scared me for Oregon. They only scored 21 points. Ohio State scored 34 and could have scored a lot more. I just trust I trust Julian Sain to minimize his mistakes. The last 2 games, he's been throwing picks early in the game. I think if he minimizes those mistakes, Ohio State will easily win every game. I think it's just up to how Sain plays. And the O-line also needs to hold up. Pass rush for Oregon's not that great. Give me Ohio State.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep this too. Ohio State's going to be out for blood. I see Bo Jackson having a huge day against Indiana in the national championship. Similar to that Trey Sermon semifinal a couple years ago. I could see him going for over 200 yards. Just Ohio State really trying to power the ball through Indiana. And I also agree with you that I think Ohio State's going to go back-to-back. That's all for our show. Thanks for tuning into this week's edition of The Grit. Make sure to support your Nears in action this week. I'm Alex Ramft.
And I'm Joseph Cullivan. We hope to see you next Friday right here on The Grit. And as always, roll Nears.